John, first of all, what was he like? So you had a 5-hour conversation, and it was quite in-depth.
It was a 5-hour conversation where he sketched out really his plan for the kingdom. He has this obsession about moving the Saudi economy away from oil and basing it around something new. And this $2 trillion fund into which Aramco will go is an amazing thing. If you think about it, it's enough to buy Google, Microsoft, the Alphabet, the whole lot of them, but Warren Buffett, all those things could go into one thing, and they'd still have change to spare. And into that fund is going to go Aramco. They've already got SABIC inside it, their industrial arm. They're going to add land, property, all these other things. And it's roughly twice as big as any other, or more than twice as big than any other sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah, his obsession, right, to move it away from oil is understandable given the volatility we saw in the oil price and the fact that we have concerns that Saudi haven't done the structural reforms needed.
Yes, and that he's pushing on very hard as well. I mean, he's already cut all the subsidies, and they're now moving on to other things. It's a rather dramatic plan in terms of the economic transformation of the country.
John, all of us were weaned on Daniel Yergin, The Prize, or Robert Lacey's books, The Kingdom. Everybody read cover to cover as their first window into the royalty. We all understand this is a generational change. Did you get that tone in your interview? And if it is a generational change, where are they heading?
Well, I think there is something of a generational change. His father is king, and you have Mohammed bin Nayef, who is the crown prince, and he's deputy crown prince. But there is an element of a group of mostly young reformers around him who want to push, very much step on the accelerator in terms of change there. And there will be some people, perhaps some people in the royal family, but certainly people from the religious side, who will be suspicious and worried about this. But I think there is an element whereby Saudi Arabia has to change. They were stuck in a situation where they were running out of money. Right. They really needed it.
I'm sure you were briefed, John, by Riyad Hamad and John Freyer and our teams on the oil dynamics of the Middle East. What is the level of desperation in Saudi Arabia about the funding of those domestic responsibilities and having enough in the bank as they've had for generations? What's the level of sweat in Riyadh?
Well, you look and see that most of their revenues have come from oil, and the idea of setting this up as an investment fund is that will change, even technically, because Aramco will go into it. It will no longer be coming directly from oil. They'll become a bit like, very similar to you, Tom, an investor sitting there living on several $1 trillion and not moving. It's going to change even the way they think about it, I think, and that, I think, is important. And they're also going to try and build up over the next few years a whole variety of different investments. And even if you look at Saudi Aramco, the aim there is very much to go from just being a producer of the oil, it's by far the biggest producer of oil in the world, to becoming the world's biggest refiner. They've already got that very clearly in their sights. They refine about 5 billion barrels a day at the moment. They want to push that up to 8 million, 10 million. They want to move into petrochemicals. And in the end, their plan for Aramco is to be a huge industrial energy company. So it goes across the whole parameters. I mean, this is a fairly dramatic change in the industrial makeup of both the country and the oil market.
And actually, there's also this underlying geopolitical tension with Iran. They haven't been friends for a long time, and so this adds another layer of uncertainty, or I don't know if it's chaos, but combativeness.
I think it's fair to say the Saudis did not react well to Barack Obama's suggestion that they share the Middle East with Iran. They certainly see Iran as a foe, and you even see, even in the oil market, we also pushed a story through on the oil today, is what the Prince said, is that if the Iranians are going to pump more oil, then Saudi will feel that it can do the same, and that alone would change the dynamics of that as well.
Yeah, and Tom, this goes, when the headlines broke on the Bloomberg terminal, Jeffrey, you were also giving some analysis. Is there anything, do you have a question for John?
Did the peg come up at all? Because, if I look at a new 2 trillion oil fund, if you look at Norway's oil fund in Norwegian kroner terms, it's actually still up, so they don't really have to worry about domestic payments and things. This, a lot of people argue, is a misalignment that the GCC in general, those who still have pegs, will have to deal with. Is that under consideration?
I don't think it is directly. It's a very good question. It didn't, but it's not something which is a priority for them at the moment. But you're right, it's something which is going to become ever more important. There's definitely an element whereby in that region, the reformers within Saudi Arabia are looking very much at the idea of trying to create some sort of version of a free trade zone across the rest of the GCC. There is an element, you get this also from the IMF, for many other places, that this region has got to change. It's got to change, possibly, in the end, probably politically as well.
Tell us more about that. I'm absolutely fascinated. $2 trillion, right, in this wealth fund. And he seemed to make a clear point by saying they want to be the biggest.
They will be the biggest, and his aim is to become much bigger still. The aim is to use this to push out, not just to include Saudi Arabia, Saudi Aramco, and also SABIC, but also to bring in other assets to do with land, property, mining, all those things, and to run this as far as they can in a professional, I suppose, professionally managed way. They brought in young managers from different places to try and do it. It's it is certainly a gamble, but it's one which is being taken by somebody who, I think, for the past few years has been arguing this very strongly within the family.
John, tell us what the requirement is by Saudi Arabia of the United States. It has been, I know you've been traveling, but it has been an absolutely original 10 days in American politics. Not to be so bold as to say, did the Crown Prince bring up the Deputy Crown Prince? Did he bring up Mr. Trump or Mr. Sanders? But the idea of what is their requirement from the next President of the United States or their requirement from the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
I think their main requirement from the President of the United States, I think, is some degree of support. I think that's what they're looking for. Their argument, which you can argue with or disagree with, is that they see Iran very much as the people who've intruded into this world, that they are trying to push ahead. They've been a loyal ally of America in the way they see it. And they are cross, I think, in different ways by the way in which Iran is coming into the fold. Against that, you can see, because of the Iran deal, you can see the possibilities, maybe, of a deal of Syria. You can see other things beginning to come onto the tableau. The interesting thing about the Middle East at the moment is that it's suddenly become a place where everything is up for grabs in some ways. And the Saudis are very keen to reassert their own bit. But they, I think, in general,
right.
Prince, I should be clear, did not say this. In general, if you talk to people in the Saudi court, they very much put across the thing that Obama is someone who has not necessarily been as strong as they would like.
John, one final question, if I could, and let's bring it back to the price of oil. Edward Morse at Citigroup talks often about the demand dynamics. How badly do the Saudis need a strong American economy?
I think they need a strong, everyone wants a strong American economy, they want a strong world economy. What's interesting about them is that there are various, what comes through quite strongly about Saudi Arabia at the moment is there are various tensions. You would imagine straightforwardly that their main priority would be a high oil price. I don't think it's as clear as that. I think that they now have very different priorities. If they had an oil price of, say, around $50 or $40, somewhere around there, they feel relatively comfortable in that zone because they think that is enough for people to keep on buying oil. But also, from the point of view of the reformers within Saudi Arabia, it is a prompt to get more people inside the kingdom to realise that they've got to move away from oil. It's a very complicated economics problem. I mean, how do you monetize something when you've got the most reserves of a commodity that not everyone is going to want to buy forever?
John, thank you so much. John.